In the movie Limitless, Bradley Cooper's character is an out-of-work writer who has a creative block and can't seem to get started on his next novel. And after taking the pill NZT48, it's not that has access to any kind of magic. It's more that his brain has been unlocked so much that all the strategies and all the information about how to proceed has been unlocked. He basically has been given the ultimate strategy about how to proceed. And this, in combination with an out-of-world intellect where he can just absorb information and knowledge very quickly, allows him to accumulate power, become a prolific writer, a really successful investor, and then eventually, at the end of the movie, the President of the United States. Well, what if you had access to a supercomputer? Let's say you had a special room in your house where there was a supercomputer, and any question that you put in about how to go about doing something, you got answer to. This is actually a real thing. It's called the Superconscious Mind, and it's been referenced by Napoleon Hill, a modern kind of success coach and writer, Brian Tracy, whose works I've read in recent weeks. And it was utilized by many great creatives, such as Nikola Tesla. All his inventions came about by the functioning of the superconscious mind. But also musicians such as Mozart and great writers. There is this faculty within us that taps us into the creative flow of the universe. Ralph Waldo Emerson called it the Oversoul, Napoleon Hill called it the infinite intelligence, and Brian Tracy refers to it as the superconscious mind. The superconscious mind allows you to tap into the collective subconscious, or the entire collective memory of the universe at large. And many of you may have had experiences with this. Let's say you've been stuck with some problem, and you've been just staring at it. There comes a breaking point where while you're working at this problem, you just sort of get completely exhausted. And then, boom, it comes to you. The answer comes to you in fullness, completely, and it's like a flash of insight. And it seems almost obvious. And when you are hit with a superconscious idea, you get a surge of free energy. If you've had an experience like this, please share it below, because I think maybe some people might need some persuading as to believing in this faculty. But it's as if information outside of yourself. You might get an instinct to call someone. You're like, oh my gosh, to solve this problem, I should call this person. And it's time-dated information, so you have to do it very quickly. You have to act on your superconscious insights in a hurry. I'm currently utilizing my superconscious right now, and that's why I was driven to make this video. Back in May, if you look at one of my older videos in which I think it's titled "NoFap is a Superconductor," I had just talked about I had flown to LA, and I had a meeting with a really great talent agency at that time, and a really great manager. He was actually the old manager of Mark Ruffalo. And I thought, this is it. It's all starting for me. Like, at that point, I'd been about 50 days of NoFap, and I thought maybe I was being rewarded for embodying this really fantastic discipline in my life for the first time. So I had these meetings, and actually they both turned me down. And it was crushing. I thought, wait, hang on. I felt like, oh, because I'm doing NoFap, I deserve to have this great talent agency represent me and Mark Ruffalo's old manager represent me. Why hasn't it happened? At that point, I had a super conscious insight. I realized that my life had to be bigger than just being an actor. If I ever became like a decently successful actor, which, I mean, fuck it, let's just assume it's never gonna happen for me. Okay, but if I were to become decently successful, I mean, decent success, like success that 99% of actors never get to, is just being on some bullshit TV show like NCIS or Riverdale or some shit like that. And I mean, I have the exact, I could be like on an episode of Gossip Girl as like that Indian guy who offers the hot girl a pen, like, oh, okay, pfft, the end. That's the kind of You know, people work really hard to be that Indian guy who offers the girl a pen on an episode of Gossip Girl. And I was like, I realized, you know, my life has to be bigger than just that capacity, just that role. So I had a super conscious insight that I had to learn a tangential skill. And eventually that's what allowed me to start studying, not eventually, very shortly after, what allowed me to start studying SEO, digital marketing, and cloud computing, which is my current career. And it's actually a career that I'm getting a lot of joy and fulfillment out of. I also had another super conscious insight flash that I had to create a demo reel. No one had ever seen my acting on screen. Some people had come to see some plays that I'd done locally, but even I didn't know if I could have done successful screen acting. And I'm somewhat enthusiastic and terrified to announce that I have just completed my demo reel, and if you guys wanted to support me in any capacity in terms of my acting front, then please, I have left my demo reel link in the description box below, and also a link to my Backstage account, which has all my headshots and all of my scenes that I've worked on in the last 3 months. I'd love to get a like on that video and just some positive comments, because eventually agents are going to look at those videos, and it would, if you feel compelled to help me out, if you don't want to, I mean, totally fine, but if you feel compelled to be of any support to me, that's something that I could use. But I had that super conscious flash to work on a demo reel, and that's something I've done in the last 3 months. And so now I have to strategize about how to get an agent, and a really successfully ranked agent. And just last night I had this flash of insight about how to go about it. And once you get it, it seems so obvious, but I'm not going to tell you what that strategy is until I've locked down my agent, because I don't want to preemptively assume that I've achieved anything, you know. So anyway, that's enough rambling about how it applies to my personal life. I want to go into a little bit about how to utilize the superconscious in your own life. So Brian Tracy talks about 2 strategies about how to utilize the superconscious mind. The first is writing down that problem that you're working on in the form of a positive present tense question. Let's say you want to increase your income by like 20%. Let's just use the example. Let's say you make $40,000 a year right now. If you're someone in the US, that's a very reasonable salary to be making in a corporate position. And you want to turn that $40,000 into $50,000, from $20 an hour to $25 an hour. You just write down on a sheet of paper, what can I do to make $50,000 a year? And then you list out everything that you can think of. At that point, you're using your synthetic creative faculties. That's your crank faculties. Basically, there's nothing magical about that capacity. It's just you're deliberately using all the logical reasoning available to you to figure out the solution to a problem. But as you strategize, as you maybe come up with 10 to 15 things about what you can do to increase your income. I can show up to my job earlier, I can work later, I can work less at my job and instead use that time to study another high income skill. I can reach out to a bunch of people on LinkedIn. I can attend networking sessions in my local city. I can join these creative meetups. I can volunteer with this business organization. You just come up with every strategy you can possibly think of about how to increase your income. That's one thing. Eventually you'll get to a point where you can't think of anything else to do. And at that point you force yourself to come up with 3 to 5 more strategies. Like, I don't know, I can't think of anything else. You just sit with that sheet of paper until you force your brain to come up with something else. And sometimes it could just be weird. I could eat a better diet. Somehow maybe that'll allow me to have more energy and have a more positive mental attitude, and maybe it'll help me. I don't know. You get to a point where you can't really think of things, so you start getting a little weirder about it. At some point, your superconscious may kick in, and you may have a flash of insight. And it often comes to the point of exhaustion. Once you've exhausted your crank faculties, and you've started to enact those crank strategies, the stuff that's logical, you just assume that the logical stuff won't work. But once you've enabled those crank faculties to the point of exhaustion, you might find in that exhaustion, in that relaxation that kicks in afterwards, boom, you get an insight. And the other method of utilizing your superconscious is to completely relax and engage in some other high vibration activities once you've set up your question. You're like, listen, superconscious, I need the solution to this problem. I don't know how to acquire this thing that I'm looking for right now. This has been somewhat true for me. I need a great agent in my life. That's the next thing I need forward for my goals. I either need you to get rid of this desire to be a screen actor, like please omit this desire, or I need you to tell me how to get a decent agent. It's one of those two things. So boom, that's the question I've written down. Please tell me how to proceed. And you'll find that if you write down that question right before sleeping, then often in the morning that insight comes. But you write down that question and then you set it aside for a little bit and you engage in some other high vibration activities. What are some high vibration activities? Napoleon Hill, in his chapter 11 of Think and Grow Rich, The Mystery of Sex Transmutation, he talks about 10 or 11 things that can raise our vibration to a high level. The number one is the need for sex expression. The need for sex expression makes a person rise up to a high vibration, because one of the things that we as men that we really need to do is procreate. I mean, everyone, men and women, we have that urge. It's inborn with us. If it wasn't, then we would have very terrible biological fitness. If you didn't have the instinct to reproduce your genes, you'd be a terrible biological species, because you know, the species wouldn't propagate. And on the biological level, that's the entire purpose you were born. So the need for sex expression, if you practice NoFap, that will intrinsically make your superconscious work a little better. It'll make your vibration be a little more charged up. Other methods of increasing your vibration is a burning desire for money and fame. Auto-suggestion, just using affirmations and using visualizations to make your creative faculties work a little better. Listening to amazing music, having camaraderie with another friend, understanding through mutual suffering. I mean, that's actually not a method that I would recommend because I don't want you guys to suffer. But having an understanding with someone through mutual suffering, that is a way of actually increasing your vibration. Drugs, narcotics, alcohol, those are the destructive media of activating your infinite intelligence. But that's why a lot of rappers or musicians, they smoke a lot of weed or they do a lot of drugs, because temporarily it does raise your creative faculties before it ultimately destroys them. But those are temporary fixes to making your superconscious work. So essentially, the functioning of the superconscious is a result of either complete concentration and just concentration to the point of exhaustion on a problem, or to set it as an intention, set it as a question, and then completely leaving it aside. Here's a quick story, the last thing I want to leave you with. A quick story about what the superconscious can do. And this is mentioned in Brian Tracy's audiobook called Maximum Achievement. There was a truck that was stuck under a bridge. Like a truck tried to go through a bridge and it got stuck there. And a whole crew of workers were trying to get the truck out. They were pulling on the truck with chains, with another vehicle to try to get it through. And a little boy came up to them and said, "What are you guys trying to do?" The foreman said, "We're trying to get the truck is stuck, we're trying to get the truck through the bridge." And the little boy says, "Well, why don't you just let the air out of the tires?" So that is an example of the superconscious at work. It's creative thinking, it's deep creative strategizing, and it's almost childlike in its execution. Children are mentally very free, which is why often they can come up with great strategies and solutions to things. And the less stressed you are, the more relaxed you are in chasing your ambition. And the more you have this calm, confident expectation that it'll work out, that's when the superconscious reasoning begins to come into fold even more. Do you have any strategies of your own about how to activate the superconscious? Do you have any stories about when you were stuck on a problem and you had a flash of insight to make the superconscious move forward and answer your question? I'd love to know, because I am in the midst of, I'm at a point where the goals that I had set back in April after I didn't get an agent, I've actually reached those goals. And once again, I'm sorry for pitching it so much, but if you care to, I'd love a like on the video where I've linked my demo reel. And if I'm not total garbage at acting, I'd love to hear that too. So, have you had any occasions in which you've utilized your superconscious mind to solve a problem? I mean, if you're a FAPstronaut, I'm sure you have, because you just start to become a more high vibration person. You have greater functioning overall. You have more enthusiasm, joy, and creativity in your life. And so naturally, one of the things that goes with it is access to the superconscious. That's it for today's video, guys. I will see you all next week. Thank you once again for all your support and all your insights and everything that you're sharing. I really, from the depths of my heart, I value you all so much. I really appreciate you. And I can't wait to hear about all the wonderful strategies and enactments that you have in your personal and professional lives to bring progress, because greatness is coming for all of us. Hey, I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.